Managers of Reddit, what's the worst thing an employee has done to get themselves fired? When I was a manager in a smaller kennel, two of the female employees came independently to say one of the other workers had shown them some very inappropriate images and made a lot of inappropriate comments about the animals. Checked his socials just to see what kind of things he's posting publicly, and it's all the worst furry stuff and sexualizing animals. Also saw some pictures of him with the dogs at work that had some very inappropriate comments alongside them. He didn't work for much longer and lost his shit when I told him we can't allow him to work around animals or give him a reference. Story comes from my mom, who's a night manager at a retail shop. This guy starts. He absolutely reeks, and when I mean reek, customers would report a horrid smell from wherever had been even hours after had gone home. Immediately the shop manager and my mom and the rest of the team want him gone. But this is the UK. He can't be sacked for just smelling worse than a skunk. So over the next few days he's monitored daily, where eventually he's caught on camera reaching into his trousers and pulling out what looks like rotten meat and fish and eating it raw. He was quickly dismissed for contaminating free from products intentionally. Guy was just hired. He asked to go home on his second day because he shit his pants. Alright, shit happens, a little TMI, but what can you do? He must be an honest soul. Went home for the afternoon, came in on the third day, shit his pants again and asked to go home. There was no fourth day. Blew up 45 PNY worth of equipment through shoddy electrical work he had been already trained for. To be fair, this one's also on us management. We probably shouldn't have let him have a go at even this simple electrical work, considering how unreliable he had shown himself to be thus far. We had an HR woman and a male executive at our company both get fired. They were accidentally walked in on in their executive's office. They were found to be both partaking in lines of cocaine, and the woman was busy playing the man's skin flute. Both were terminated. Early 20s kid disappeared for a week on a heroin binge. His friends dropped him off in the middle of the day the next week, walking into the office high off his balls as if nothing happened. The next day his dad came to apologize, explain what happened, let us know that he was going back to rehab, and ask if he could continue working afterwards. One employee was constantly stealing food from the refrigerator that other employees placed in there for lunch and late work night dinners. Eventually, after weeks of complaints, the IT department set up a hidden camera and caught the woman taking 2 yogurts, a Weight Watchers TV dinner, and a can of Coke in one swoop. At another job, a coworker got snippy with the receptionist during an internal phone call. As she clicked the phone, she said FGB exclamation TCH, but the click did not disconnect the call. The receptionist was still on the line and said, "What did you call me?" HR would later get involved. It was investigated and the coworker was terminated. I don't remember the circumstances, but an employee slapped our general manager and walked out. No, the police weren't called, probably because the GM was doing a lot of shady shit, and that's probably why he got slapped. Not a manager, but have been in the restaurant biz for 30 years. Worst I saw was a 40 chef hitting on and basically attempting to molest our 16-year-old hostess. I caught him myself. He had her cornered in the dish room with nobody around. Even though he was a full chef and me just a sous, and 10 years my senior, I basically kinda fired him. Told him if he didn't leave now of his own free will and never come back, he would be leaving on a stretcher, possibly in a bag. Poor girl was in tears. It's been somewhere around 15 years, and it still infuriates me to think about. She pressed charges, it was all on camera, and he was arrested. Got off light though on a plea, which also infuriates me. Got a couple months in jail, not even prison, years of probation, and didn't even have to register on the sex offenders list. Which also infuriates me until this day. He was never a chef anywhere around here ever again though. We blackballed the fuck out of him. Arig. Sorry, had to get that out. I'm not a manager, but an employee of an airport cargo handling company. We had a guy, crash a brand new jet engine air start unit into a jet engine. Bosses were not happy. Not really a manager, but a small business owner, wedding photographer. Showed up an hour and a half late, smelling of whiskey and weed, got him to photograph a bit past the ceremony, then told him to peace. Sexually harassing the 17-year-old daughter of the best friend of the business owner is a pretty special way to get fired. CEO walked into his office while he was masturbating. She was not happy with how he was using his time. I had an employee pull out a bag of meth and ask another employee if he wanted to smoke some of it. Another employee was supposed to go canvassing in a company car. After hours of being gone and not answering phone calls, the police called from a county 3 hours away to inform me that the employee had crashed the car because he was high on heroin and I needed to make arrangements to pick up the totaled car. Left on shift. She was a nurse for what it's worth, so she didn't just leave a store or something, she left her patients unattended and her CNA left with her to go fuck her CNA at the dog park across the street. Came back and finished her shift night shift. Posted I love fucking on Facebook at 3 a.m. during said shift, which her husband not the CNA saw, which led to him showing up at the facility threatening staff members. Last I heard about her, she lost her license due to trafficking fentanyl. First job in insurance. Weird guy wanted to be an SIU, the team that investigates fraud. He got it in his head that, rather than investigating external fraud as part of the claims department, they were a kind of clandestine CEA operation who were listening in on our phone calls, and you could get tapped to join if you were smart enough and hardworking enough. He was fired for sleeping at his desk repeatedly. I worked at a food distribution center in the UK years ago. You could get into trouble for leaving the warehouse floor without authorization, and this guy wanted to use the loo, but didn't want to get into trouble. So he done a poo in one of the 1,100 LTR wheelie bins that are scattered around the warehouse. He was fired. I think I laughed for 2 days. Had a guy working for me who was a recovering alcoholic. One of the other employees went to Cuba and brought him back a Mickey of Cuban rum without knowing how bad it was. The guy drank it all in the bathroom before collapsing and nearly pulling down all of the fixtures. I made sure he got home and gave him an ultimatum: resign and use us as a reference or get fired with cause. He chose the former. The guy lived under a bridge for a while after before settling in with his father in another province. Him still his reference for employment. Some years back, walked in on one of my employees doing cocaine in a stairwell. Yeah, you do whatever the fuck you want at home. But if you're doing that shit at work, you obviously have a serious problem, and I don't really want you on my team.